if it works. This meeting is being
It says it says being live streamed. So we are live.
All right. It's still loading on this end. So I will tell you when I see it pop up. Okay. It looks like we're good. I'm just going to hit refresh here. All right. We are live. So hello out there, everyone. I'm super excited for this new little venture that we have. I'm here today with Coach Tiffany Heath. And I'm really excited about this. Just to give you a little background, Coach Tiffany and I met each other during a mentorship program, a coaching mentorship program. And I think we both realized we had very, very similar backgrounds, both in exercise science, worked kind of in the industry for several years, went on to get certified through Precision Nutrition, and then through the Online Trainer Academy. And through their mentorship program is where we met. So I think our philosophies are very similar. And, you know, we both are very passionate about getting the word out to all of you and to kind of breaking that diet mentality. So we are going to alternate every other week. So when I am hosting, we'll be at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And when Tiffany is hosting, we'll be at 12 o'clock Pacific time because she's out in
Mountain Standard Time.
Mountain time. Oh, sorry. Mountain time.
You're
right.
Good.
Mountain time. She's out in Utah.
Yes.
So our plan right now is every other week. And, you know, we have some topics in mind, but we'd love to hear from all of you. Things that you're interested in hearing more about, learning about, diving deeper into. And, you know, we know your time is valuable, so we will try to keep these short, 10 to 15 minutes tops. And we really hope you'll get a lot of value out of that. So without further ado, Tiffany is going to talk to you today about protein. And I'm going to turn it over to her and I will monitor the comments. So if questions come up, Tiffany, I'll just pop in and let you know.
Awesome. And like we talked about, I'm so glad you will just, chime in, please at any time, because I love when it's both of us. And, you know, we both come from, even though we have very similar backgrounds and things like that, it's always, I love hearing just other ideas or, you know, things from other coaches too. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of stuff to add, but just to kind of, just start us off here, I want to just kind of mention, like, why should you care? Why should people care about even getting enough protein? And there's lots of benefits, but just to kind of quickly maybe sum up some of the top reasons why we should care about, you know, getting enough protein. And maybe this is a topic for another time, but I think it's also important to recognize there's a difference between enough protein versus optimal, you know, amounts of protein for our bodies to function optimally. But like it can help us with cravings and with overeating. If we have higher protein, it helps reduce those cravings and we feel more satisfied. So especially if people are trying to lose weight or, you know, improve their body composition, protein really plays an important role in that because it helps us feel more satisfied. So a lot of times we eat less if we have, you know, the proper amounts of protein in our diet. It can also help. It's a critical player in our ability to recover and even our immune system and things like that. And so, you know, when we have enough protein, it can help us get sick less. It can just, again, help build those muscles and those tissues and things that our body needs. So anything you would add to that, Dana, as far as?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. And in fact, in my coaching program last night, we talked about protein and really hit on a lot of those same points. You know, I think the satiety factor for sure, like, you know, helping you feel full. But then also I find on the days where I hit my protein, my nighttime cravings are significantly reduced.
Yep.
Right. Like my body doesn't feel like it needs to catch up. So I think that's, you know, that's huge. But I do know, and obviously we're going to talk about this, but a lot of times we struggle to get enough protein. So,
Yep. So that's a perfect segue into kind of the top, 3 basically kind of hacks. If, you know, if you're a tired, stressed out mom, then this is kind of for you. And so we'll just start with the first one. The first one, I think, is just we need to make it easy, especially if we're tired, we're busy, we're stressed out. The harder it is to get that protein in our diet, the less likely it is to happen. So we want to make it easy. And the nice thing about that is there's plenty of options of, good quality, high quality protein options out there that do make it very convenient, for us to be able to get those things in. So the first one I want to talk about is just, the convenience of things like protein powders, and protein bars. And we'll get into how to kind of decide or figure out like what's maybe a better choice in our step number 3 or option number 3. But just know that, protein shakes, protein drinks, or the bars, they're such an easy, convenient way. And if you want to go really super quick and easy, you can buy some of the ready to drink protein shakes that don't even necessarily have to be refrigerated. I like to refrigerate them when I'm going to drink them later, but they're shelf stable. So things like the Premier Protein or other things are a great way. And there's like 30 grams of protein, in one of those little drinks. So, or whatever, kind that you like. But I think the ready to drink protein shakes are super easy to on the go. You can grab those. Same with the protein bars. If you have a little bit more time and you want to make your own, you could make your own protein shake at home. I think both Dana and I probably have an infographic we could share on the super shake, where literally that's my go-to. I want to say at least 4 out of the 7 days a week where I make my own protein shake. Sometimes I'll do it the night before, keep it in the fridge in a blender bottle, and it's there. When I leave the next morning, I can drink it in the car, or if I want something to sip on throughout the day, that's another good choice. Anything you'd add to convenience as far as, ultimately?
Yeah, I think those are both great points. Having the ready-made shakes are great. I like the Fairlife protein shakes.
Yes.
So I get those at Costco.
Yes.
So I love those. And then one of my other easy things is just the ready-to-eat chicken at Trader Joe's. I'm a huge Trader Joe's fan, but stuff like that. Like I know, depending on the philosophy where you may have come from, like a stricter diet type, like everything has to be homemade and it has to be home.
Right.
We have to let go of some of that, I feel like. And as you go, sure, like you can work on then maybe making that stuff at home, but there's so many things that we have to do before that. Like I feel like sometimes we get lost in the minutia a little bit. So I think those are great points. Make it easy. Get that stuff that is ready to go. So you have less decision making, to happen.
Well, and that's a perfect kind of leeway into the second part of what I wanted to cover on the Make It Easy is, for those that maybe still want to, I love how you said it. We do need to let those things go. Absolutely. But like, let's say you're still kind of torn, or maybe you have a little bit more time. Some of the things we can do at home to make those protein things available that actually don't really require a lot of extra time, it just requires us to kind of think ahead a little bit, is when you're making meals or whatever, cook up extra protein. If you're already grilling like some grilled chicken breast or whatever, it's not going to take you any longer to grill up a couple of extra or whatever it is, ground turkey, lean ground beef, or any of those protein options, just make a little bit extra when you're already cooking, and then boom, you have that. But like you mentioned, the Trader Joe's, I know Costco even too carries some like ready to eat, like grilled chicken bites. So things like that, where you are kind of meal prepping. I feel like it's like cheating almost, but because you're already in the kitchen doing something, that's just a really another way to make it very convenient. If you're making eggs, a few extra hard-boiled eggs, or I don't know, depending on your preference, sometimes even like scrambled eggs, I'll make extras. It doesn't bother me to eat those reheated. Some people it might, but anyways, okay, let's move on to tip number 2, which is think outside the box. And this is, I think, such a big one with at least a lot of the clients, or even people that I hear all the time. They're always asking for, well, what are some good snack ideas for protein, or what are some, and I think we just get too caught up in like a snack has to be a protein bar or a protein shake, and yes, again, those are convenient, but there's other choices besides that. And it could be stuff like the hard-boiled eggs. It could be things like, when I talk about thinking outside the box, who's to say that a snack can't be a small portion of leftover dinner from the night before? Like if you made some chili or something, or again, back to the grilled chicken breast or whatever protein that you cooked. One of my go-tos is refried beans or pinto beans or black beans, and that might be, it's technically still a carb, but if someone is either doesn't like a lot of animal products, or for whatever reasons chooses to try to get more of their protein through plant-based options, beans, legumes, lentils, those are a great source. Why not have those for a snack? And again, this kind of goes back to having those on hand ready. So that's one of the things I just tell people is, why not have leftovers in just a little portion? And obviously it's,
I love that,
if you're at home or, on the go, but yeah, we don't have to always think protein bars and protein shakes.
I mean, that's a great idea. And that's something as easy as like when you're cleaning up from dinner, right? And you're putting your leftovers in, like put them in smaller containers. Like the next time you're at the store, grab some snack size containers and like portion it out. I mean, that's such a great, simple, easy tip. You're right. Redefine the snack. It does not have to be packaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Then let's move on to our final kind of tip on focusing on quality of protein. And here's where, you and I were kind of talking before about a lot of people might, think when we're talking protein bars, it might be like a Kind bar or like the granola bars with added protein or whatever. And I think it's important to note that I think there's a time and place for everything. But if we're trying to focus on the quality of protein, that's not going to be the things with like the nuts. A lot of people just think, oh, nuts, protein, when actually they're more considered, a fat, because the fat we have higher content of fat. There's a little bit of protein in there. But if we were trying to get all our protein from nut butters or nuts, we'd have to eat a big amount of those to get enough protein. So back to the whole quality, looking for which is reading labels, looking for on the protein bars, for example, the Kind bars. Do you remember exactly how many grams of protein are in?
So I think the new Kind protein bars do have a little bit more. Okay. I want to say maybe 10 grams. Okay. But that's such a good point, right? Like Kind of throws, and I love Kind bars. This isn't to slam Kind bars by any means, but they kind of, put protein in there, which is great. But like you said, compared to something that's more of a true protein bar, maybe like a Quest bar or, what's the other one? True bar. I can't think of it off the Think bars. Where they're upwards of 20 plus grams per bar. So that's a great point. This is where we have to really start looking at our labels and paying attention. So
I love that. And same with going back to the nut butters, that can be a great complement, to a snack or whatever, but we're looking for the foods that are, higher in protein. And those are going to be things, again, like eggs, or again, any animal Greek yogurt is one of my favorite kind of go-tos as well. The plain Greek yogurt, because, there's 20 grams of protein in a cup of, my favorite is the Fage brand, or again, you can make your own, but, or even cottage cheese. I'm not personally a huge cottage cheese fan, but if you are, that's another really great source of high quality protein. So, or the edamame or things like that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Those are awesome points. We do have a couple of questions that popped in, so we can kind of tackle these if you'd like. So Linda said, hard-boiled eggs are an easy protein. Is one a day too much in addition to whatever cooking I do? So what's your thoughts on eggs? It's probably think, similar.
I think all foods can kind of fit in. And obviously if you have, certain dietary restrictions or intolerances or allergies, it might be a little bit different. But if there's nothing like that. I actually, two whole eggs would be actually considered one serving of protein, because you're looking for about 20 to 30 grams in one serving. And, for Dana, to use the hand size too, sometimes for
Yes.
so a palm size. And so 2 eggs technically would be a serving. And no, I think, the research has shown, we kind of go back and forth between, there's higher cholesterol in the egg yolks and things like that. But if you're, overall healthy and don't have any restrictions from your doctor, you're perfectly fine to have, 2 eggs every day. I have to personally change it up because I get tired of the same things every day. But
yes.
if you like it, and it works for you, absolutely. Hard-boiled egg or just eggs, in general are a great go-to.
Yes, absolutely. So I think you said it exactly. As long as you don't have any specific dietary, things that are prohibited by your doctor. Like I typically, but I go through the same thing with like egg fatigue, but I'll have 2 to 3 eggs a day for several days. And, so I don't think there's any issue with that. Chris asked if there's an advantage to getting your protein from a shake or getting it from solid foods, or is it the same?
Such a great question. So I'm going to kind of assume they're meaning kind of from like a ready to drink shake versus making your, no. Well, or maybe,
so I think she's asking, is it okay if you're supplementing with protein, or is it better to get it from whole foods?
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. So you'll have to kind of keep me short on this, but so I don't go on a tangent. Yeah. I think generally speaking, our bodies, if we look at food, on a spectrum, on one end, we have the whole foods, things that are, less processed. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have the highly processed foods. Our body is going to tend to absorb, I think better, maybe be better able to use and digest things that come from, the whole food source. However, if you are going reading labels and looking at the high quality protein powders, for example, those are designed to be easily digested. So I don't want to get too on a tangent, but I think both can work. It's just, again, it's going to be the quality, and when possible, I guess to make my point, you wouldn't want to rely on protein powder for all your protein needs. We want to make sure as much protein from whole foods that we can get. And then protein powder is just that. It's a supplement, and it can be a great choice for convenience. And those of us that are busy, or again, if you're someone like me who doesn't love a lot of meat, I supplement with a protein powder, but it's not going to be my main source of protein. Why did it take me so long to spit that out? But
I think laying out that spectrum, I think is, it's important. I mean, obviously in a perfect world, everything would come from, we would eat the food in the form that it came from. Right. But in today's reality, and I think you said it best, most of us, especially women, I think likely have to supplement with something at some point during the day to maybe hit the protein number. So, a good choice, like you mentioned, take a look at those labels, right? There's better choices for protein powders and protein shakes. Now, that's not to say don't worry about that in the beginning. So I always tell people, analysis paralysis is going to kill you. Start having the protein, right? And then you could start to make better choices with the protein as you go, right? So start with a shake, get it in, start hitting your numbers, and then let's make it a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So
absolutely. That's perfect.
Okay, awesome. So that looked like we answered. Bass had a great question. So should we limit soy as a protein? When I do powder or bars more than twice a week, it messes with my period. Yeah, I think, and this question actually came up last night on my call, which, I thought it was a great question. And I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, I think that we're probably all hormonally very different. But I know for myself, I do choose to keep soy at a minimum. Because there are studies out there that show that it can affect your hormones, and especially with it being processed and GMOs and all of that stuff out there. So I'm not a big soy eater to begin with, but I do try to limit my soy intake. How do you feel about that?
Ditto. Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to have it, try to, again, have it in that whole, again, food, sort of the
Yes.
fermented or whatever. But yeah, when it's added like the soy protein isolate or things like that, again, that you're going to find in those longer list of ingredients, I think that it's more processed and exactly what you said. So I think it's smart to kind of limit that, as much as you can.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I think we answered all of the questions.
Woohoo!
And yeah, we thank you guys so much for watching. If you have
Yes.
questions, that come up as you've gone through this, for those of you that are watching on the replay, just drop them here in the comments, and Tiffany and I will be sure to monitor them. And I'm going to drop Tiffany's profile link in the comments, as well as you have a free Facebook group too, Tiffany?
I do. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going to drop her Facebook group in there as well, for those of you that are interested in joining. And then in 2 weeks, you can join us over on her page. And we haven't decided on the form or on the topic yet. So if you guys have ideas, drop them now in the comments. What are you dying to hear about?
That's exactly what I was thinking is, let us know. So perfect.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tiffany, for being here. And thank you guys for giving us your time. Awesome. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks so much.
Right.
Thanks,
bye, everyone.
Tina. Bye.